Well, hey YouTube, it's Friday. It's October, I believe, the 9th today. And as you can see, garage workshop is pretty barren. Oh, sorry for the photo bomb there. Got the engine back together. Got all the ancillary stuff on. Still got to do a couple of things here. Got to get the oil line mounted onto the little brass bracket down there out of the engine block. I got up all the carburetor and the water intake, and then where the fuel pump goes. I've got that all taped off just to make sure no foreign material gets in the engine. And that's how she looks. So got the red block, the red head, and all the ancillary items, and the valve cover, and the timing chain cover, and then the oil pan, which is over here. Got them all painted black. Got the distributor, got it all lined up. Actually put a little paint marking there on cylinder number 1, and got that all lined up. And then this would be for, you know, where your temperature gauge would go for your water. So I had one little hiccup working on it, and that was when I was putting the oil pan on. Got the oil pan on there, got it all, you know, I always used a gasket sealant on one side, so I put it on the pan, put the gasket on there, had it on there, bolted it down, torqued. Went to actually flip the engine over on the engine stand and looked, and right here was kind of hanging out. So I'm glad we're redoing that. Go ahead and got another gasket. I think it was like $4 or $5 or whatever. So go ahead and prevent any kind of leaks. But that's up there under the timing chain cover is where that happened. And as you can see, just kind of disintegrated in a couple of places there. I don't know really why that happened, but everything else turned out fine all the way around, with the exception of back here. That actually stuck to the block, so I'll scrape that off. And then also back here where the little rubber nubs come up from your rear seal. But yeah, that was an issue. So caught that in the time, and then got to put the oil pick up, and I got the bolts in the gasket there. So the underneath of the block is just kind of hanging there on the engine stand right now. So should have that gasket probably sometime next week, I believe Tuesday. We'll get that slapped on there, and then I'll put the remainder of the ancillary items on. And then also what's coming is the Carb Rebuild Kit. So I've got the carburetor part over here. These are actually the old gaskets and the little rings, ring seals that go around the screws and everything. And then I've got these soaking in some WD-40. That's all the adjustment screws and the little metal plates and things like that, and the levers. And then the actual hard parts of the carb cleaned up real nice. With the exception of this one, probably soak that a little bit more, try to get some of that rust off. I'm probably gonna paint this, seal it up, and probably paint that some of that gloss black. That's the part that actually sits on the manifold. Then you've got, you know, here and here, and then your top for your float. The float, there's no holes in it. It doesn't look bad. And so we'll probably be able to reuse that. I'm not sure if the new kit comes with the new float, but that's looks like one of the original ones with the brazing on there and the solder. So, and it does float. I put it in some liquid and kind of pushed it down, and it popped right back up. So it does float. So we'll be able to reuse that. The engine turns over really nice. Had the big breaker bar on there, and you can actually turn it over by hand. And that's even with the cam in there, the chain, the valves and everything. And then even with the spark plugs in it. So it turns over real nice. As you know, in the manual, so on the top of the engine block, it says, you know, your intake clearance and your exhaust clearance, whether hot or engine cold. Here it says engine cold, but it's 0.014. Well, the manual calls for 0.016, and I believe that was just updated over time. So I've actually set the clearance in there just to make sure we don't have any rattling or any kind of burnt valves, just compromised, 0.015. So we're halfway between the 1.4 and the 1.6 in the manual, so we're right there. And you know, had 65,000 miles on the block, ran fine. I don't even think those valves were ever adjusted. So got them set in there, and I think we're gonna be fine on that. One little rub on my paint job here, right here. So I'll need to blast that with a little bit of touch-up paint. And then this top bolt, I'll need to paint that. But turned out really nice. I like the, you know, the replacement studs that came, and it actually came with these kind of hardened gold bolts or nuts. And believe it or not, this is actually stock. The two longer bolts for your valve or for your oil container, and then this bolt here. So got that all set up and ready to go. Still waiting on the ring and pinion for the rear diff, so we can real vid that. Don't want to be repetitive. And all the table was cleared off, and all of the table here is cleared off with the exception of the oil pan to pick up. And then I've got to get the lock washers for the hubs to get those on the front axle. And then I've got 3 gaskets here. I've got the for the fuel pump, for the exhaust manifold, the pipe, the down pipe. And then this is actually the original gasket that came off the oil pan drain plug. And the one that came with the kit is much smaller in diameter than that. This is wider this way. Not the diameter this way, but just the thickness of it, I guess, the width of the ring. The other one is about half that, but it goes in this little groove in the fill bolt there. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can see it right there. Well, the other one was stuck out. I mean, it went around the fill plug, but it stuck out farther. So I think we'll be okay on that. We'll just keep an eye on it. Still got the radiator sitting there waiting to go back in the frame. And as I point out in every other video, still waiting on the front and the rear shackle for the passenger rear side and the front driver side. The left-hand thread shackle, still waiting on that. It's been almost 2 months now. So I was told probably 2 weeks. So if I don't get it or get them by the end of next Friday, I'm probably going to cancel that order at that part supplier, try to shop around and go someplace else, because that's just a little bit ridiculous. The remaining stuff in this box, and got the belt, dry belt, and we'll replace that. And then got the steering linkages, and then the front drive shaft, and then the crossover pipes and the water tube there. So replace all that, get those on there, and then there's one bracket right down in there. You can see it right there. That bracket is actually the one that they kind of prefabbed up that would hold the alternator in. So you've got your alternator that would bolt in right here and kind of pivot, and then you've got your bracket that goes up, and then it goes into a hole here. There's actually hole on this frame, so it kind of comes out, and that's what that bracket does. It comes over the top, and then you can of course adjust the tension of your belt by way of the alternator. So probably gonna see if we can't get a better bracket and get that rigged up a little bit better than it was when it came off. Transmission transfer case and bell housing is over there. You can see in that kind of the baking pan I use for a parts washer. Got the new throw-up bearing ready to go back in, and then as I showed you before, got over here, got the new clutch, and then of course the remainder of the pressure plate under there, and then all the bolts that would go on there, and then the flywheel here cleaned up real nice. New throw-up bearing in there, cleaned up real nice. That's not a big gouge, scratch, or anything like that. It's just, you can't even feel it. It's just You can see the goo kind of sitting in here. As I work in the garage, dust and stuff kind of settles down, so this cleaned up real nice. And then I'll show you the other side. Hopefully it didn't rust too bad since I did it. There you go. Okay, and there you go. You got your timing marks there, as you can see. So, and the Henry Ford's F-spray. So I'll be able to do that. And someone has got some allergies in here, Miss Adamaya. And Miss Althea is going to start the fight. So that is Friday. Now we're at the point of sitting and waiting on two major components here and here to get that back together. The ring and pinion, then we'll be able to go get the engine hoist, get the engine back in, get the axles back in, and then finish up on the carburetor rebuild. I did want to share, this is a Carter WO, so it's the original carburetor. And there, you know, it looks really, really nice. All the flappers work, they're not rusted, there's no gum in there. I've cleaned them all out. I do need to go get some more pipe cleaners so I can, you know, get in here into the in the air and the fuel hole supply holes and just really clean up that or those areas, and down in there clean up that one a little bit better than it is. These were just done soaked overnight, and then took them out this morning, sprayed them down with WD-40, and you can see it got the majority of that rust off of there. And I will tell you right now, if I haven't shared this before, well, two things I'll do a product recommendation. Number one is this Lucas Assembly Lube. This one little, what is that, 4-ounce bottle was about 2/3 full. I used it on another engine before. 2/3 of this bottle helped me do the entire engine, rear and front axles, and the transmission. That one little bottle. This stuff is absolutely awesome. They do sell a larger, what you would find at like O'Reilly's or something like that. This Molly engine assembly tube. It's a huge 10-ounce tube, but that stuff is more like a grease consistency. And this Lucas Lube has a consistency of like a thick honey, and I really enjoy using this. It's semi-synthetic, and I've used it on all the bearings and everywhere in the engine, rotating parts, piston pins. I didn't use it on the cylinder walls. Of course, I used just straight 30-way oil. But anywhere that there was going to be a potential for a dry start, you know, I went ahead and used that Lucas stuff. The other recommendation is, if you're going to go to the auto parts store and buy $40 for a 1-gallon pail of this Kim Dip carburetor parts cleaner, you're not going to get as well of cleaning as you can get for a $25 gallon at either Lowe's or Home Depot gallon of CLR, okay? I pointed that out on another video. This is the 2nd gallon. Only used about a cup in that when I was soaking the carburetor. So, well, 2 cups, let's say, out of this new gallon. So we'll be able to use that for the probably on the body whenever we get into that. But use this. Don't go with that carb cleaner. 2 things. Number one, CLR works 10 to 20 times better, in my opinion, as far as soaking and removing dust and all kinds of crud. It actually dissolves the oil and the tarnish and the varnish and stuff like that. This absolutely smells like kerosene. It stinks up your garage. It you know, it turns into hazmat, so you've got to go dispose of it somewhere. And I think I talked about that on a previous video that, you know, once I'm done using that, and it's pretty much done now, I'm going to have to seal that up and take it out to the landfill and actually have them dispose of it properly, where the CLR stuff is just basically an organic, you know, you could pour that in your lawn and it's not going to kill anything, with the exception of whatever you've soaked it with, you know, oil or whatever thing like that. Obviously, you want to dispose of that properly, but you know, this is you know, it's plant-based, and I will swear by that stuff. A lot of people use that on, you know, in your home for your showers that are plugged up with lime and scale and stuff like that. You can spray down your bathtub and takes all that soap scum out. But I'll tell you what, using it out in here in the garage, they've sold me, and I will use that from now on versus that automotive kerosene mixture stuff in the can that's twice as much. The other thing that I would recommend is dollar store rubbing alcohol. Works really good with your shop towels to prep anything you're going to paint or get any kind of grease off of, you know, the metal parts before you paint it and stuff like that. It's excellent. It works a hell of a lot better than brake parts cleaner, and brake parts cleaner for one little spray can of that is like the cheapest one I found is around $5, whereas you can get this $1 worth of rubbing alcohol, and that'll last you, I mean, I've used 2 of these, so $2 to you know, do the flywheel, to do the paint prep on the majority of the engine. You know, before I put in the head gasket, you know, I wiped it down both the head and the block, and then yeah, so it works out real good. Do that. I would highly recommend that. And then I think I talked about another product here. When you're using metal on metal, and you want a good seal, use this Permatex copper spray gasket. Don't put it on like real thick, you know, but just enough to get a good coating on there. I've used that anywhere that it's been metal on metal contact. I think I discussed it before on that yoke up there. You can see where there's not a gasket, it's just basically shims between the yoke and the actual transfer case. I've used it there. I used it on the head gasket, and you can see the head gasket there, that kind of gold in between the red. That's where it's recommended to be used. And then I've used it on the exhaust gasket here. I mean, that stuff's made for high temp, and it definitely is going to hopefully seal where we're going to need to have a good sealing surface. Got the new engine mounts that go in the block here. I'll have to locate the bolts for that. And then I've still got my boxes over here with the remainder of the ancillary items. Well, I got the starter sitting here, but I've also got some more stuff in this box here. Fuel pump, I did rebuild that. I'll need to get a new fuel filter. Excuse me. And then down in that box is just an alternator and the bolts that go along with that. So clean that up. That might be a project for tomorrow, actually, clean up that alternator. And then this is the shocks and universal joints, and then the U-bolts for the frame that's still sitting here. So there we go. That'll wrap it up for this week. Sorry I haven't posted anything. Not a whole lot of movement, other than I think the last thing that I posted when I was talking about the crankshaft bearings, setting the in play, and you know, I've got in there, I've got all the gaskets and everything like that. The nuts that you see here, these hardened nuts, and these 2 bolts here and here, actually came from Ace Hardware, and those are grade 8 bolts, and they are exactly the same as what came off of it. And then I actually had to remember, in the very first video, there was a bolt missing on the water pump right here, this bolt. So I got a replacement one of those and a replacement lock washer to go on there. So sorry to be so anal retentive and go over all this stuff, you know, but it's just that kind of attention to detail that really stands out. just to make sure we're crossing all those T's and dotting all those I's and getting everything solid. You know, getting it back to where it needs to be. Did get replacement studs for the exhaust, as well as the nuts and the lock washer on there, on all of them, and you can see. And then got the copper gaskets that go underneath the two valve cover bolts here and here. Got those copper washers, and then got the actual seal here. Now, one thing I'd recommend while I'm here talking about that, one thing I'd recommend is when you go to put in your, let's just call this an exhaust gas recirculation system. This tube that goes back up to your intake, okay? Comes out of your crankcase ventilation. There's a little screen behind here, as you know, but your gasket, when you go to put this in, make sure you center it on the hole, okay? Because it has a tendency to want to slip off one side or another, and then you're going to have your cap going on there, and your washer is going to be off like this. So let's just use this as an example. There's your hole, and then you've got your EGR, you know, your valve breather going in there. Your gasket kind of goes up like this or down like that, and it's off center. And then you got a problem where you're going to have oil weeping out of here over time. So make sure that's centered on there. Got it nice, snug down. Again, copper washer in there. One thing I was kind of curious about is I'm not sure what these two little access ports are. I don't know what, you know, there must be something that would be you know, like an accessory or something that would be driven off of the engine vacuum or something that would go into these two if you took those plugs out. But I'm not aware of anything that I know of that would go there. But there we go. So happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. When we talk again, it'll probably be sometime next week. I'll get that get that oil pickup back in and seal up that oil pan, and then get these hubs back on. I'll definitely get those lock washers over the weekend. And then got the bolts and the washers for the training cover, or the bell housing cover there. And then the one last thing I need to get for that transmission, remember that breather that's on top of the, I can't really spin it around, but there's a breather that goes up on top of there. Don't be looking at my wife over there. But I need to figure out what to do there. But that's not a problem we're gonna have to solve right now. We'll wait until we get it actually back into the frame and get all lined back up. So that'll do it for today. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.